Tanse Tawau, welcome. I'm Janine Wendolf, and I'm the Director of Indigenous Arts, and I'm really excited to be able to welcome you to Decolonizing the Narrative with our special guest, Georgina Lightning. But before we begin, I actually do want to welcome another special guest. Many of you might remember Anders Hunter, who's been supporting Indigenous arts for many events and programs, and is here to help welcome us all in a good way. For those who traveled far and white-knuckled it from the stories I heard, I really appreciate you being here with us and joining us in person. But I also want to acknowledge online our guests who are joining in on the webinar, and our production delivery specialist, senior production delivery specialist, Jess Brenders, is helping facilitate our online audience. So I also want to acknowledge that we have many people from near and far. But before we begin, Anders, to begin us in a good way. So give him some love.
Thank you. Hello, is this mic on? Can you hear me up there? Perfect. Yes, ambo tits. Harm chazenis, hochigi manas yes no, like my caron stamis. Ne makochine nakoda makochin sawadno. One ngazada. Why did you come be then hibi has? Unji, o kind trying in do everything among yab canin o parte wa him gana. You might want panang coping awana. O dagi chedan, you have out to some ya name makochi, o mani wanganane, o masigaka et sad. It's like a ne o parte himne, that's how what na pedavic ne, dangina o parte of Chinati, no. Again, thank you very much, people. Welcome here to Nakota Makochi, Nakota land. Our Nakota people refer to this land as Minihpa. We used to use this land prior to it becoming a national park. We had our own version of our national park. We would pick medicines, we would hunt, we would fish, we would do a lot of ceremonial events around this land. And we still do today sometimes, right? But it's not so public. It's still ceremonial and sacred in its unique way. And you saw me walking around with a smudge too. That's how we like to start off any event, to start smudging the area. And if you look under your chairs, if you don't mind, you'll see that there's nothing there. Just to kind of, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to sing a song to welcome you all to Nakota land, otherwise known as Banff. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Tiniki for the song and starting us off in a good way. You know, for these sessions, we really do acknowledge that many of us come from far and wide, but all of us have come here to share our gifts in some way. So whether you're here to celebrate for this event alone, that's amazing. And I know many of you are here for programs and continuously come back to be able to do their work on Sacred Buffalo Guardian Mountain. So with that, I always like to acknowledge the mountain and how it impacts us during our time here and influences us, and we continue to gather and foster the spirit of convening. So we have some Indigenous fashion designers in the crowd. I know we have some Indigenous leadership participants as well. So I also want to give yourself a round of applause and each other. Are you tired? So for those of you who may be new to Banff Centre or your first time visiting online or in person, just to introduce myself, I'm originally from La Ronge, Saskatchewan. So on my paternal side, I'm Woodland Cree. But then from my mom's side, I'm from James Bay Agreement, so Waswanipi Cree Nation. So in that, I'm a Atikamekw Cree. But I was also adopted and raised by a Plains Cree, and we don't all agree, and we're not all the same. But it's really important I acknowledge each of those backgrounds that impacted who I am and why I'm here today. And why I'm here today is actually my two children, Delari and Corwin. You know, when we came to Banff every year, they wanted to call this place home. And so I was really grateful Banff Centre gave us that start 6 years ago so that we can come and support not only to live and play, but also to welcome artists and guests each and every way. So coming here before, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life before because that's how I knew Georgina. So when I was young, I actually wanted to be a filmmaker. That was my first dream in La Ronge. But for La Ronge, there wasn't much job opportunities, especially when you say, I want to be a filmmaker. You're like, okay, but what do you really want to do? A bush pilot, which was my second dream. So maybe when I retire from this world, I might become a bush pilot. We'll see. But looking at the screen and trying to find that connection to, is that even a possible reality that I could go to? Is there other people like me, like a little Nehiawa Squeo, a little Cree, well, woman, but I was a kid then. But, you know, Georgina was on screen and she was doing a lot of work. And, you know, that really reinforced that there is opportunity for Indigenous people to be on screen. But recognizing the challenges that you have come and the fact that the road that I walked was much easier because of matriarchs in the industry such as yourself. And so I'm very humbled to be able to host and honor this event tonight, and also to position myself as a learner as well. So I'm ready to have my cup filled, and with that, have a great conversation at the end of the presentation. But I would love to welcome Georgina Lightning to come and speak and share time with us. So if we can get really loud.
We're gonna switch over to this. Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here. I'm humbled, Janine. And I just wanted to start us off since, you know, now the room is all set and the tone is all there and everything. I just want to appeal to your open sense and your open spirit, okay? So we're just going to play a little bit of a song here first, just to get you in my space. Really loud. Let's blast this.
Do you want to lay down with me? Say, baby, do you want to lay down by my side? Baby, do you want to lay down with me? Say, do you want to lay down with me? I say, baby, do you want to lay down, baby? Say, baby, do you want to lay down with me? I say, baby. Do you want to lay down with me? Say, baby, do you want to lay down by my side? Baby, do you want to lay down with me? I say, do you want to lay down with me? I say, baby, do you want to lay down, baby? Say, baby, do you want to lay down with me? I say, baby. Do you want to lay down with me? Say, baby, do you want to lay down, baby?
All right. Are we here? All right. Why did I play Les Claypool to open up this discussion? Anybody? Was it something you were expecting? You know you weren't, if you're honest. No one expected that. Why? Well, look at your age. I mean, that's not age appropriate. Because you're Indigenous. We should be playing roundies or something, right? I know that caught you off guard, and that's what I want. I want that part of your brain to open up for this conversation, okay? So here we are talking about decolonizing the narrative. Something that, after talking to a lot of my colleagues, peers, family, like Chucky, Chris Eyre, who made Smoke Signals, etc. I talked to Chucky, I talked to Wes Studi, I talked to Sterling Harjo. I said, hey, I'm doing this conversation over here at the Banff Arts Centre, and I wanted to talk, I picked their brain about a few things. I wanted to talk to them first, and I said, just so you know, I'm gonna be, talking about you behind your back on this stage. So I just want to see if there's anything that stands out that you can share so we can really inform people in the smartest way, right? Fact-based. So, yeah, I don't think that there's anyone, out of anyone that I talk to, and I've been in the film industry for 35 years, Sterling Harjo is the only one that was able to say, you know what? They let me do it all. I said, cool. Can you send me a quote or something like that? Because I'm putting it. So this morning he texted me, he goes, Georgie, I don't have a quote. I said, well, you already gave me a quote. They let me do it all. And he just laughed. It's like, well, seriously, like that is so rare when an Indigenous person can tell a story from their concept to the screen. And especially, he did that with FX, right, Hulu? And so you've got a corporation, a film corporation that's completely funding you, and to let you as an Indigenous filmmaker do it yourself. It's an anomaly, okay? It's not like that in the norm. And that's one person out of all my filmmaker friends, okay? So first of all, with decolonizing the narrative, I'll just share some of my personal experience with you so that you understand, the perspective that I'm coming from when I'm talking about decolonizing the narrative, okay? And then we're gonna talk about the film economy, all right? The power, the incredible power that the film industry has, okay? When you are involved in the film industry, you advance politically, socially, and economically. We, as Indigenous people, like Screen Actors Guild, which is the largest local in the world, Indigenous people are like minus 0.6. We don't even make up 1% in our union. That's how little representation we have in mainstream media. Here in Canada, you have APTN, and that's incredible. You've got about a quarter of the population here that has subscribership, and we don't know how many people are actually watching and tuning into that channel, but it's a lower demographic than what I'm talking about. And I'm so grateful for APTN. It's a great platform for Indigenous content, etc. But what I want to talk about today is mainstream media. Like Sterling Harjo is finally standing toe-to-toe because of what he did. And we're in 2025. Film industry is 120 years old. And we're just finally now have one TV series on mainstream TV that it did 3 seasons, and then Sterling's like, okay, I'm ready to hang that up now. And now he's making Lowdown. Lowdown is not an Indigenous content. It's about a journalist who is living in Tulsa. So he now got to step outside of the box, the tight little box, and he got to step outside of that to actually make something that he dreamed about doing with no parameters. That also is a first time in history. And that just, the season, I think it just finished the season 1 airing. So that's a huge victory, thank God for Sterling. But, then I've got people calling me going, Georgie, oh my God. Like, knowing all the work that we've done. It's like, you guys made it. You made it. It's like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. Because I saw a TV series on there, and it's like, yeah, there's one series. You know how many channels there are? How many thousands of productions each year? That's not making it. I don't think we can actually say we made it in my lifetime. But I hope that the work that we do collectively, there's leaders in here, there's economic development folks, there's our wonderful friends who came in from Edmonton, from the Edmonton Industry Screen Office, dealing with locations, which are gonna, Indigenous people got to open up and learn film-friendly ways to provide locations for filmmakers as well. I mean, there's so many people that we need to get on board this. We need the ministries of education, economic development, culture and arts, tourism. I mean, there's so many industries, right, that technology that can get involved in this and turn this whole thing around. So let me just get started on here. So I'm going to tell you where it all began, okay? So in 1988, my kids and I, living from Edmonton, we joined an organization called the American Indian Registry for Performing Artists. Why? Because, I mean, you got to remember, this is 88. There was no cell phones. There wasn't even pagers at this time. So they made a book, okay, of the Indigenous actors, because there was no jobs. Like we were nobody could get cast in anything, and the understanding was there was no such thing as Indigenous actors. Like, they don't act. They're like the extras, but there's no such thing, right? So they formulated this book, and it was done by the late Will Sampson. If you know Will from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, okay? And so he formulated this whole thing, and this is Wes Studi, Izan McLarnon, Josh Drum, John Trudell, Sherry Foster, all of us OGs. Like, Cody was 2 years old in that book, This is how, I mean, it was a while ago. So then, fast forward, we're at 1990. I ended up moving to Los Angeles with their 3 kids. So instead of functioning here in Edmonton, where there was no opportunity either, the dean of my school, in the program I was in at the U of A, I was that one complaining constantly. How come we're not doing this? We're not doing that. Like, I was constantly a pest. And he said, we're never going to be what you want. Never. You want something much different than what we can provide. We're not there. We won't be there. So if that's really what you want, because we see that that's your passion, you need to go somewhere else. Where? He said LA or New York. So, wow. I mean, you don't think of that when you have 3 kids and a husband. So I got a divorce. All right, we got to fix this. And I flew out to LA. We actually had our divorce vacation at Disneyland, across from a library. And I spent my time in the library. That was our internet back then. And I checked out schools, and I fell in love with the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. It's an old conservatory approach. You can do 3 years. You're only accepted for 1 year. It's the difference between UCLA and USC and all that. So you can go for 1 year, and you have to be invited back the 2nd year, and invited back the 3rd. And that was kind of stressful with 3 kids, so I was like, oh gosh. Begged my mom to move with me. We arrived in LA 3 days before I started school. I had flown there a few times to find the best school, and get our housing situated and all that kind of stuff. And so there was 362 of us the first year, 67 of us the 2nd year, and 15 of us the 3rd year. I mean, they really wean you out, right? You have to really, they didn't even know I had kids. I was diligent. You can't miss more than 24 hours or you get booted out, right? So when I got out of there, at the end of our graduation, I won the Michael Toma Award. I didn't even know what that was. I wasn't trying to win an award. I just wanted to be the best I could possibly be, so that it didn't matter what my skin tone was. If I was the best and could prove to them, it wouldn't matter. How naive was I? Because I got out of the film industry and there was nothing but crickets. I got to go and audition twice a year, and I had tons of showcases, right? At the Academy, because I was a lead ingenue, I got to play some of the most sophisticated, incredible roles ever written for women. Brecht, Shakespeare, Molière, Sam Shepard, the best female roles ever written. Really complex, beautiful roles. And then, the film industry, the very first time I had an opportunity, I was able to read a script, Geronimo, and there was the Columbia version, and there was 2 females in there, and Renee Haynes, who's our #1 casting director, or the #1 casting director for Indigenous content. She's the one that cast Dances with Wolves and then had a career ever since. She said, there's 2 roles in this. Which one would you like to read for? I picked the role. I said, I want the most complex. I want to dig in. I'm not that leading lady type. I want to dig in and just be, you know. I mean, people always used to say, when are you ever going to play the role that's normal? Because I used to play those, you know, those nutty, you know, Joan of Arc in A Lie of the Mind. I mean, you know, that kind of stuff. So while I was at the academy also, my 3 kids, the very first year, Crystal was the first one to book a role. So she booked 3 Ninjas Knuckle Up, and it was, you know, 3 boys and a little sassy girl. She was the little sassy girl. Cody was 5 years old in his first role in Geronimo. He was Dakluji. And my son William was 9 years old in his first good speaking role. He was Tecumseh in the movie Tecumseh. Those are the films that Jane Fonda inspired, you know, Happy Wife, Happy Life. Well, she was married to Ted Turner at the time. And so she persuaded him to do this Indigenous series, right? So there was like $60 million, here you go, make this, or 80 million, sorry, and make this series. So it was like Lakota Woman, Tecumseh, Geronimo, Broken Chain, like this whole series that they developed. And a lot of our Indigenous talent finally started to get to perform and get exercise and you know, mostly men. 98% of them were men. My daughter played Star Watcher in Tecumseh, you know, but very few female roles. There just wasn't anything for, you know, 28-year-old female, right? So by the time I got to the academy, 31, there just was nothing. So I became this fly around the continent with my 3 kids constantly. And then another thing that happened when I moved there in 1990 was Dances with Wolves was produced. First time ever there was Indigenous people portrayed in such an awesome way, right? Wes Studi, Graham Greene. Graham was nominated for an Academy Award because of Kicking Bird. Like, it was pretty exceptional. That was an incredible role. Very rare. I mean, so people opened their minds and went, wow, maybe there is something to Indigenous people acting and not being that you know, the stereotypical trope character, the savage, you know, demented Indian. So it was really exceptional. And all the people that were in Dances with Wolves ended up moving to LA. So we had, you know, Steve Rivas, all of those guys ended up moving to LA in a van, moved to an apartment on Hollywood Boulevard. Really stinky, 4 guys in an apartment. Like, it was pretty nasty. But they lived there and they toughed it out. And I became everyone's den mother. I was the only one with 3 kids. So, you know, nobody else had kids or they left them at home or whatever. So I ended up looking after everybody, you know. So you form a family and my kids ended up growing up with aunties and uncles in the film industry. That's all we knew, was people in the film industry. And then every January to March was pilot season in LA. So that's when all the Canadian actors, Gary Farmer, Adam Beach, Nathaniel Arcan, etc., that my house would be packed with people, you know, sleeping on the couch, at the top of the bunk, wherever they could find a place during pilot season, January to March. So I watched a lot of Indians come out and try to get roles, and hardly anybody ever got even a nibble, you know. And this was like they were considered our top actors at the time. Mainstream just wasn't doing anything for them. So then another thing that I like to do is I like to do a comparison of Geronimo. Has anybody seen the Geronimo, the Columbia version with Wes Studi? Anybody? Can you put your hands up? Let me see if there's anybody so you know what I'm talking about. So 2 of you. Okay, what about the Geronimo TNT version? The one with Joseph Fox. Okay, well, let me just tell you, I talked to Wes about the whole Geronimo a few times because the Geronimo version really upset me. It bothered me. When I got out of that theater, I was very upset and frustrated as an Indigenous person, as a person in the film industry, and somebody who, you know, begs for authentic storytelling. I was really disheartened because if you look at the poster, and it was, I mean, Wes was on every billboard, he was on the side of buses, everything. And you go to the theater, and Geronimo, the role of Geronimo was barely. It became like Gene Hackman's role was at least 30% larger. You know, all of these different characters had way bigger roles, and it was about the Matt Damon character being in love with, you know, following as a protege to the predecessor. So it was the capture of Geronimo. It didn't show the decline or anything. So it really broke my heart about that whole thing, right? And Wes even remembers. He said, remember how the Directors Guild, that hallway, that if anyone here has been at the Directors Guild, maybe our screen office, the Directors Guild of LA on Sunset Boulevard, and they had the screening, the cast and crew screening of Geronimo. And Wes said he walked out, and John Milius went up to him and said, Wes, what the heck? What'd you let them do to my script? Like, he was so upset. And Wes said, I'm an actor. Not only an actor, I'm an Indigenous actor. You think I got any say? So first of all, there was that script. Remember I said that I was given a script and there was 2 females? And I was like, oh, I want this one. Well, by the time it got through the whole studio phase, there was no females in it. It was only male. And all the roles were changed completely. And agents, AA, triple, you know, CAA, ICM, all that. There's 6 major agencies come in and they say, if Gene Hackman's going to be in there, you got to expand the role. If this person's going to be in there, you got to expand the role. So that the narrative changes constantly. Nobody really has power over the narrative, right? It's a whole conglomeration. But by the time they finished, it was mud. So then you take a look at the TNT version. My son Cody was in that. He was Dakluji. That one, it revealed a complex human being, right? It showed him as a young man being in love, just like any other human being, being in love, having a baby, and then this graphic horror that happened to his wife and child. And then again and again and again. So that finally we understand who Geronimo is, the severe injustices, and then we understand his point of view. So we go in this journey of a human being instead of like, oh, the bloodthirsty Geronimo that was in the Columbia version. So there's another, you know, other people telling our narrative constantly. We didn't have a chance, you know, and these Indian actors just, you have to surrender to the process. People want it to work, right? So then, does anybody remember Dark Winds in 1991? Yeah? Okay, so Robert Redford will tell you, and he's been quoted saying that this was a complete miscasting. It failed because he cast Lou Diamond Phillips as an Indigenous, as the Navajo Jim Chi, okay? So it failed completely, and, you know, some of the quotes too, because I was at the Academy at the time, was like, well, Indians, I can't find any, there's no such thing. And then years later, he developed the Sundance Native Cinema. You know, I was around during that time, and that's when Chucky, Chris Eyre, in 1998, he debuted Smoke Signals. So my youngest, Cody, is young Victor in that. If you know Adam's character, Victor, he's the young Victor, okay? So, and that was, let me see. It won the, Audience Choice Award, and Chucky won the Filmmaker's Trophy, which was like, it put us on the map, and people got to see like, wow, Indigenous people can actually tell their own story. This is an example of narrative, Indigenous people having narrative control, okay? Because Sherman Alexie wrote the book, Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven was the name of his book. And Chucky got out of NYU and went to Sherman and said, hey, I want to make this into a movie. And so they collaborated, and Sherman wrote the screenplay. And so it was, you know, Chucky and Sherman. Sherman's from Coeur d'Alene, Chucky's Shawnee, Delaware. And they made this content. And thank goodness the production company, Dreamcatcher, from Seattle, really liked Sherman's, you know, books. Lone Ranger was on the New York bestseller list at that time. So it was pretty exceptional. So there you go. That was in 1998. We finally arrive as filmmakers, okay? So here's Little Fluffy. And then, okay, so that's Little Fluffy. Here's Big Fluffy. So then here we are, just a couple years ago. That same character, this is how small Indian country is. It didn't matter if we went to, you know, New York, any coast we were at. You go to a powwow and we're there and my kids are grass dancing. So many people would come up and say, "Hey, Victor, what about your dad?" Like, you know, they would all be quoting Thomas, Builds a Fire. And so he got known as this Victor. Everybody in Indian country knows him as Victor, and a lot of non-Indigenous people too. And Cody's really the only one that's actually had a career that wasn't the cookie cutter. I haven't gotten out of it yet, and Crystal hasn't yet either. He played Johnny Depp's son in The Brave. He was an Echo for Marvel, which is an Indigenous content story, but it's mainstream. Like, you know, he's the one that's had the most luck. He's a brilliant actor. Not just saying that because he's my son, but anyone who's watched his improvisation knows this, okay? So, but it's still, it's not like, you know, we're making a living on this. You know, everybody's struggling in Indian country. It doesn't matter what kind of, you know, it's few and far between is what I'm saying. So also, if you remember Dreamkeeper, I want to tell you, like, the very first time I actually had hope, and because this is, you know, touring with my kids for over a decade now. And I was so disheartened because remember, it took 3 years from the academy, and then 2003 is when I was hired to coach the actors for Dreamkeeper. Dreamkeeper was shot in Calgary, and it was Ron McLeod and Matthew O'Connor were heading up that production, $40 million production, and it was about a grandfather and a Muslim and his grandson, and he's sick, and he wants to take him on this journey because his grandson is starting to be, you know, a brat, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's like, I got to take my grandson on this journey and start instilling Indian culture. So he tells him Makhnamach, Cheyenne, Lakota, all these different legends, 7 different legends. And so the cast, it was the largest in history, and still to this day, with 104 speaking roles. It had 78 days of filming, over 1,500 checks. They say 25, but it was the largest experience for Indigenous people on a set. But it wasn't just that it was, you know, Indigenous people, but I got to watch, standing beside Steve Barron every day, because I was the acting coach, and, you know, I'd watch the dailies. I mean, you know, by the end I was involved in everything, right? Because if you're watching the actors and their performances in every nation's, the 7 different nations, you're involved in wardrobe, hair, makeup, all of the departments. So they said, "George, we're just going to make you a producer." So from acting coach to producer. And the fact that they had that kind of, like, you know, kindness and awareness to do something like that. And just sitting beside them on the daily and having, you know, I think you should reshoot that because of this actor or that actor. And listening to me, it changed my life. I actually I started a company called Tribal Alliance Production because of this. And to this day, Matthew O'Connor is my mentor. He works with Tribal Alliance today. He's helping me with this new mission we have here, which I'm going to share about later. But, you know, it changed my life because I saw Indigenous people being treated with respect. And, you know, when we had a Zoom meeting with Telefilm the other day, and Matthew said, "Georgie, did I ever tell you that I got 3 phone calls from producers, and they said, 'Matthew, what are you doing? It's going to be a disaster.'" That was the word. "It's going to be a disaster working with all these Indigenous people." What were we called back then? Aboriginal, or whatever they call it. I don't know, it changes every week. But Aboriginal people, oh my God, it's going to be a nightmare. I mean, 3 people, he said, and he was just like, okay, whatever. He didn't really get what they were talking about. But it didn't taint the way he came in and was so respectful. And it's just like, wow, that's when I thought it can be done. This can really be done. We can actually go into producing, and we can follow that model where Indigenous people are respected. And I saw Steve Barron, the director, conduct that set, and these were big sets. You know, at times we had buffaloes roaming like, brah, you know, with all the horses. I mean, it was so complex. And I watched him not once have a sweat on it, like how he talked to the crew. And that is what developed and in my mind. That was the seed that planted, and it's like, when I grow up, I'm going to be like that. And so that's how I always want to run my sets. To me, they showed me and demonstrated. It's like, you know, I saw Indian country, our the way that we conduct ourselves in business and in governance in a circle, and everybody is respected. The guy who takes out the garbage has to be treated the same way you talk to me. No, it's not like the Hollywood system, which I'd always seen. My son, my middle son, who you don't see very often anymore because he quit when he was 14. After 2 features, back-to-back one summer, he was treated with such severe racism. He was so disheartened, and he's highly sensitive. He quit, and he never wanted to be on a set again. You know, it breaks my heart because he was really, you know, he loved it until that bad experience. It happened in Toronto on a movie called The Oath. Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to say it. Keeping the promise of the oath. Okay, so then I want to talk about one of the most disgusting, gross examples of colonized narration, okay? It's one thing to like write a script and talk about Indigenous people in such a narrow-minded way. But to take fact, take our history, and completely rewrite it into something, it was so disgusting, you know? Pocahontas, I think Disney has what, like over 15,000 lawsuits against it. They've been appropriating forever, right? Some of the best stories that they've ever developed come from Wales. They go to Wales and they steal all the stories, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, etc. Like brilliant stories that those guys write over there and Disney steals. Well, to steal our history of Pocahontas, you know, and make it a silly little romance, like it was just really gross, especially when we deal with such severity for Indigenous women. MMIW were the highest in every epidemic, you know? I mean, it's just a shame. And there was never an apology and never a do-over. Okay, so it's just like one of those things. You know, when you're not a part of the game, you don't have any say. They just got to make it, and it is what it is, right? So then, as a non-Indigenous narrative, I've been an actor in several things, right? Walker, Texas Ranger, Three Pines, which was Amazon. I've done some, you know, I've worked with some cool people, right? Alfred Maloney, we call him Fred. And the one thing about Three Pines is they got Tracy Deer, who's an Indigenous filmmaker, Mohawk. She directed 2 episodes. Like, that's really rare, too. For mainstream TV, you know, to allow an Indigenous woman, that was a historical thing I got to be a part of, you know? That was incredible, and they really were respectful. A lot of the protests, they would ask because we had already gone through Idle No More. Like, they really cared, and they were respectful, and it was like, every now and then you get this, you know, you get a corrective experience. You get booted 15 times in the head, and then you get a corrective experience, you know? And it's like, oh, look at this. This is so beautiful. But we stay in it. I don't know. And Alaska Daily with Hilary Swank, you know, it was an MMIW thing. What's getting funded? Like most of the things, including the audition I printed out this morning, what I've been, in the last 5 years, auditioning for is the grieving mom, my son, my daughter, my grandchild. This one is, the one I have an audition for now is a grieving teacher, all right? So right on the top it says her eyes are swollen, she's crying, and then her niece comes in and says, what's going on with your eyes? And she said, well, I just came from a funeral, one of my students, and he just got his life together, you know. Anyways, I'm really grateful. I love working, and I can do that stuff, you know, it has dimension, it has complexity, and I can do it. It's just, once in a blue moon, I would love to be able to audition. Like, you know, at my age, I know I'm never gonna get my dream. Like, my dream role is not gonna happen. It's past, you know, I'm in an age category that doesn't happen anymore. But my kids, I really want things to change, and I keep talking. Like, Wes and I did this, we did a presentation at the Comic-Con about thinking outside the box. Like, we're Indigenous people. If you take a look at the roles, because Wes is really the only one that's played roles that, if you know, thinking outside the box, he's been lucky in about 3 roles that he's had where he got to play a human being. And they were cool characters. Like, it was like, wow, can we have more of that, please? So we were trying to talk to writers. When you're writing, please think of us as human beings. And a lot of us have, you know, training. a lot of really sophisticated training. We could tackle any role. When I came out of the academy, if you could lift your own self in weight, I would have lit 10 of me. That's how I was like, woo, bring it on, any role, bring it on. I wasn't intimidated by nothing, fearless. And it's changed, since then. After not getting opportunities, I haven't exercised. I haven't been in Shakespeare or Brecht or anything. But my kids have the ability. Your kids have the ability. Our cousins, all of our relatives have the ability, I got to play in Max Martini's, he's a friend of mine, and he just called me up and said, Georgie, and that's the first time in my whole life I played a non-Indigenous role. He just said, hey, you want to come out? I'm going to make a movie in New Mexico. Blah, blah. And I played this quirky, chick. I even had my hair curled. Like, it was like so bizarre to play this role. And it was next to the American Horror Story, some of the actors from there. And I was like, wow, you're making this film? And it was really cool. Another corrective experience. And then just recently, Die My Love. It was shot in Calgary. Jessica Lawrence is in that. And here's a corrective story. So I'm going in the hair trailer, and I'm so used to going in the hair and makeup trailer. It's been the same every single role that I've ever had in my whole life. It's like, oh wow, look at your hair. And I mean, I lost my hair in a cancer battle, but I normally have long hair. And it's like, oh wow, look at that. Oh, what do you think? Do you guys think, let's see, should we go straight? Do you think we should go straight? I think we should go straight. Do you think? Okay, let's go straight. And then it takes like 35 minutes. How straight can we get straight? Like, my hair is always straight if you look at any of the roles. And this time was different. They go, we want to do, a whole updo. We're thinking the psych nurse in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And they actually put rollers in my hair. It was a bouffant. A couple days ago, I had to send pictures to Sasha and the department head, and she said, we're gonna submit these for the Oscars. What? So I had to send before and after pictures. My stringy straight, and then this bouffant. Like, it was really wild. So wild that when I walked in, the director goes, oh, calm that down. Like, that's never happened. And I was telling, between takes, I was telling Jennifer, I said, you know what's bizarre? You have stringy straight hair, which I'm used to, and I have curled bouffant. Like, they spent time on my hair. This is so trippy. She goes, really? Yeah. 35 years, man. This is my first time I've ever had my hair curled on a set. I mean, that blows my mind. It's 35 years. The first time they curled my hair and made it like something that wasn't the stereotypical Indian woman look, One of the series that I had for Indigenous filmmakers, so this is a victory as well. The first and only one that I've ever been a part of. But Rutherford Falls, has anybody seen that? It was on NBC. I was in that, yeah. So Jenna, the lead girl here, I was her mom. And it had 2 seasons, but it's the first time in history that women filmmakers actually were in control of this content. So that's like, whoa. So many firsts. So if we can be, witnessing these first-time experiences and going, wow, it validates the fact that, if that can happen, it took, 117 years, but, now we're getting momentum, and we're starting to prove to the world, look, we can do this. Look at, we're having successes on major networks, right? There was an unfortunate event with Trickster, and everybody, I think, knows that story, right? It was Indigenous content. That was not colonized content. It was a decolonized narrative. Eden is a Kitimat Indigenous woman, incredible author, wrote these Trickster books, and then it was acquired by Michelle Latimer. The unfortunate thing is after we shot a season, and it was content that crossed borders. They had acquisitions in the UK with the international co-pro partners, but also in the US. This is content that left Canada and was going to get global exposure. That was historical also. And it was Eden Robinson's characters as well. But unfortunately, there was, imposter, fraud, cultural appropriation, etc. It was fraudulently acquired by Michelle. So they canceled it. And it was such a bummer. Because me as an Indigenous woman, I remember I was coming back from my cousin Kevin's in Kelowna, and somebody said, hey, Georgie, what do you think about what's going on? I said, what do you mean, what's going on? I've been in Kelowna, I haven't been watching nothing. And well, about Michelle Latimer, I said, I don't know what's going on. Let me get home and I'll catch up and I'll call you back. So I got home and I caught up on the news and I was just freaked out. Like, oh my God, my daughter's the lead in that and she loves it. And 3-year contract, all these Indigenous people that were working on it, because so many Indigenous people from Kitimat, from North Bay, there is a lot of people, Indigenous people working on national television, which was incredible. It was exceptional. And so I immediately emailed Michelle, Georgie here, I have a solution. I don't know what's going on, but why don't you take care of your stuff? I have a 100% Indigenous owned and operated company. Let us keep the train going. I'll take over and kill my character. I don't care. I just want this train to keep going. There's so many people involved. This is the biggest thing since sliced bread for us, please. And she took a few days to respond, and she said, sorry, Georgie, but this is a conflict of interest. I'm not allowed to talk to you about this, but all I can say is I have a lot of decisions to make in the next 2 weeks. Now, why would that be conflict of interest if an Indigenous woman can save it? And then we found out later. But, unfortunately, she let the train hit the wall before she allowed it to be saved. So, and that was a bummer, because it was like, what are you going to replace it with, CBC? We didn't know, and they promised that they're going to continue to put that budget into Indigenous content. So we're still, waiting to see what happens there. All right. So Dark Winds. Remember I said Dark Winds with Robert Redford? With Bob, and he was like, he was genuinely remorseful about that, right? So fast forward, this chick from Taos, a friend of the circle, calls Chucky, Chris there, and says, hey, what do you think about getting George and Bob and you in a room and let's talk about the Tony Hillerman series? George R. R. Martin from Game of Thrones lives in Santa Fe in our little community, and so does Bob, lives in Santa Fe, and so does Chucky, and Catherine came in from Taos, and they had a meeting, and Chucky says at the end of that, they said, that'd be interesting. They all said that'd be interesting. Nobody said no, nobody said yes. Fast forward, it took them some years, but they ended up getting Dark Winds. Now, Dark Winds is executive produced. Chucky's on it, Bob and George. And look at the caliber that Chucky, finally, after Smoke Signals, that's like his next biggest thing. And remember, he's the first one that put us on the map in 1998. So it took all the way up to 2022 for him to have another. Like, he didn't get that silver carpet. Oh, wow, you made something big. Let's give you a 3-picture deal at Miramax. That didn't happen, in the writer's room, these are all really, Stephen Paul Judd, I'm so great, like, Rihanna Yazzie, Billy Luther, Erica Tremblay, Tasba, Luther, and Graham, all in the writer's room. All Indigenous people are on like a major national television series sitting in the writer's room. Another corrective experience. And Zani, I met Zon at the Dances with Wolves premiere, and I remember him coming in, this sassy, cocky guy, going, what the hell is this guy? Like, wow. I remember rolling up on a Harley, just like really cocky. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like, not in training, nothing. And here I am, like, a theater snob, like, you got to get training. But no, he was going to roll in and just, like, take Hollywood by storm. Well, here is that Zani. Little cutie Zon. He's the guy in the middle. So he's the Jim Chi. He's taking over what Lou Diamond Phillips was. And here is Edmonton's own Jessica Matten. She's playing his co-lead. And what's his face? Kiowa from Tricks. What's that? Whatever that show is called. Anyway, so I just wanted to play something. You know Howard Stern? His show garners millions millions on YouTube, okay? He joined Sirius Radio in 2024, and they have 33 million paid subscribers, okay? That was just recently. So this was just last week, November 10th, and I want you to listen to this, okay? What happened? Oh, I'll do it by hand.
That sounded very Native American, didn't it?
Yes, it did. You have been doing that lately, like you speak and sing Indian language, the American Indian language.
I think it's because I'm watching this TV show called Dark Winds. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, really?
Dark Winds?
I've seen it on the thumbnail, yeah.
Yeah, on Netflix. I'm watching all 3 seasons, and it's this, it takes place on the reservation, and it's the Navajo police, the Indian reservation police, and pretty good, actually. It's an old show, I think.
Because I looked at it for a second, but I think I don't like reservation shows.
I didn't think I did either, but this one's and there's a lot of magic and stuff where
a lot of ceremony.
A lot of ceremony. A lot going on in the res, and I dig it. I dig Native American. I always feel bad. I'm like, these dudes were here and then they got wiped out. So I need to support the show. I watched Dark Winds. Then I was watching yesterday.
Well, there was a teenage Indian show. And I really couldn't watch that because it was all about how poor they were and how they had nothing. I was like, oh
yeah, everybody on this show is poor, except for like the white people who rip them off and stuff. It's good. I mean, it's not good white people. It's good. It's a good show.
White people will like it.
White people will fuck you up. That's the message.
Okay, you get my point. Here we are in 2025, and that's the kind of, media is powerful. So what Robin said, she was talking about reservation dogs, okay? Sterling Harjo's hit. And the actresses, Pauline Alexis, who's from Alexis, one of our own kids, was on every major talk show. These kids were on it was a success. It is a success, okay? And then you got this ignorant point of view. The reservation, and it's all about poor people. I know she didn't read it. She didn't watch it. It was about kids who had a dream to go to Hollywood, and it was hilarious. It's a comedy. It's not depressing. It's not about poor people. It had nothing to do with that. So, but her perception based on everything she's learned up to date, all the content she's watched, the regurgitated themes, makes her think that that's what it's about, of course, because that's what keeps getting replayed for them, because the media is powerful, okay? Talking about dark, and listen to the goofiness, and 33 million potential people had the potential to listen to that. So that's what we're dealing with. And so here we are. And what we have to do is create a film economy. We're not going to change that narrative where the Robins of the world, and she's a black chick, she should know better. Come on, she's a minority too. But we're not going to change it unless we get involved in the film industry, and if we all participate in what I want to pitch is Alberta building a film economy, Indigenous film economy. So we take story and we use that as a natural resource. Oil is a resource in Alberta. Alberta is the wealthiest province in the country. It's a powerhouse, Mecca, globally also because of the oil, right? And so why don't we take some of that industry, oil, profit, revenue, and put it into a film industry? And what I wanted to propose, which I've been proposing to our nations, is that we put our own fund together. So say we come up with, just throw a number out there. If we come up with $5 million, we want the government to match that dollar for dollar. So we want the province and the feds, because there's 6 calls to action that are not being answered because of our lack of inclusivity in the film industry, building an economy, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot here that we can utilize to tap in. So for economic development, and I think there's economic development and leadership here, that'd be great. We need everybody to get on board of this, and I want to teach you, because a lot of people are not part of the film industry, service production. Let's just talk about what service production is, okay? That's when, Hollywood, somebody over at Warner Brothers gives Matthew O'Connor a call from Reunion and says, hey, bro, do you want to produce this thing we got going on? It's called Snowpiercer. Okay, Snowpiercer. We got $380 million for 4 seasons, and we're going to get Jennifer Connelly. She just won an Oscar, so let's, utilize that star power. How about that? Yeah, sure. So then Bob gets on a plane, goes and meets with Matthew. They shake hands. Here you go. Matthew puts a lot of people to work. And Matthew said on Snowpiercer, on a good day, there was 350 people employed in one day, in a good day. At least 250, but on a good day, 350, okay? $380 million dropped into that economy. And then after they finish it all, and even the editors, they even had editors in BC, they made the whole thing there. Then his buddy from LA comes back and says, thanks, man, see you later. Goes back to Hollywood, and they exploit it out of there. So the intellectual property is owned in Hollywood, okay? They come here to get the labor done, tax rebate, everything, because it's cheaper, way cheaper to shoot it here than anywhere else. But then they take the goods back, and they exploit it there. So they keep the wealth in Hollywood, okay? They own it, and they get to exploit it there. And that's what we have to do, okay? And it's a great economy. I mean, it's great. We need to continue service production. We need to keep attracting. Alberta can't really do that great. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest. Luke and Dorian. Because when I go to Crew Up, at the time that I was shooting Grandmother's Medicine here, Ron was doing Blackstone. And it's like, everybody's working on Blackstone. At the time, they taught me that it was 1.5 crew thick. So you got to import people from BC. It's like, wow. It makes it so expensive to do a high quality production here. And there was definitely no Indigenous people in the union. That wasn't even heard of. So we have to cultivate industry. We have to keep figuring out a way to build this capacity so we can bring those Hollywood productions to Alberta. How can we do that? We can get our education ministers, to start building infrastructure. Anything, since we have oil industry, if we take the people, we already have what it takes to build a really incredible multi-billion-dollar industry, because film is multi-billion-dollar. In California, it's actually trillion, okay? What's the economy in California? It's $4.1 trillion, okay? And what it is, their economy is built on entertainment, technology, business, and finance. And we have that in Alberta. We can take people from this oil industry and transfer it over. It's clean, green work, okay? The film industry is the sexiest industry to be in, I'm just gonna say. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep getting kicked in the head and then keep coming back. What the hell is wrong with us, okay? Because there's nothing more incredible than coming up with an idea, getting people to buy into your idea. You're on a set. Whenever I go on a set, I just visited my daughter. She's on that show, Anna Pigeon, that's shooting. And I'm just even walking in the makeup trailer, I'm like, oh, I just love the feeling I get being on a set like that. I just love it. When I went to visit Snowpiercer, there was 4 sound stages, all wow. I just get so, like how I get when I listen to Les Claypool. The bassist, the brilliant bassist that you heard earlier, that kind of brilliance, that's the kind of feeling I get. So decolonizing the narrative, if we really want to, again, Indian country, we have to learn to use story as a resource. And I'm not saying let's let's repeat what's been done to us. We're not going to do that, okay? We want every person in Alberta to be involved. I don't care if you're green, purple, red, what race you are, what gender, what age, anything. All we're saying is this Indigenous fund, and we want the money to be matched, is we want to create stories. We want to have a chance to write our own stories. And then we want the best of the best. Let's everybody come and work on it. And I see that as being such a giant act of reconciliation. Because whenever we are working on an Indigenous content production, and you've got all people from all walks of life working together, there's a common decency, there's respect, there's love. You're all doing something creatively together, there's magic there. And then later, when you do the cast and crew screening, and you all get to watch the work that you did as a team, like it's a machine. It's just like, it's such an incredible high. Like you can't even imagine it, right? So all I'm saying is let's work towards the mission that I have. And I've been meeting with the chiefs. We've got a referendum signed by all the chiefs in Treaty 6. I went to that meeting, did a presentation, and they all signed off on it. I met with Chief Kelsey, Jacko from Cold Lake. He said, I said, I want to meet with XYZ. I gotcha. And he's the one that said, and let's not just talk about it, let's do action. Let's have some action. Like people are now on board in Indian country, ready to get this going. So we're going to need support. We're going to need help. We're going to need people to take it seriously. Like anything from, like my grandson walking in, he's 6 years old. I say, tell me a story. What'd you do today? You know? Like, let's start getting behind storytellers, content creators. It's in our DNA, story. Oral storytellers forever, you know? And while Hollywood keeps regurgitating the same story, like Dark Winds has been produced 3 times, you know? Like we've got new stories. But we've got to, get behind those content creators and support them. The solution, building an economy. Ron Scott was probably the only Indigenous filmmaker that I know that he produced Blackstone, had 5 seasons, Tribal 2 seasons, right? So there's already, people are familiar to Indigenous content creation here, and he employed probably more Indigenous people in the film industry in the history of Alberta, okay? We got to keep that up. We got to keep that momentum going, okay? The wealthiest province, I already covered. This is like a 5-hour presentation, so I'm cutting it down to 45 minutes. Okay, so I covered what service production is earlier, and I want to tell you, when I started studying this, it's like after when I realized we're going to be living here. I don't want to say stuck here, but my grandson was born, and then my kids and we moved to Edmonton. So if we're going to be here, we've got to make things different. I can't function the way that it is right now, personally. Because of my age. I'm going to be honest. It takes 3 years to make one piece of content if you go through telefilm as a filmmaker. CMF if you're making TV. I've got a stack of script this high. So does my kids. We've all got tons of content. I know a lot of people that are writers that have tons of content too. We've got to build a machine where we're producing a lot more content. So there is a company that I'm studying right now out of Burbank. So this guy has they've produced in-house over 300 movies. They've distributed over 500. It's a model where they produce low budget, like spaghetti westerns. Remember spaghetti westerns, Clint Eastwood? Like, let's make some movies and, we can go to Italy and shoot stuff for like a fraction of the price because they were non-union. And they made all those spaghetti westerns, came back and look at Clint Eastwood, I mean, it can be done. It's not rocket science. We're not reinventing the wheel. We've got all kinds of examples of success to draw on, And so at the time that I was studying this, when I figured it out, Ontario had made in the film economy $5.4 billion. 5.4 for the whole province I'm talking about. BC had made 5.7 that year. And I learned too, like sometimes they switch. Sometimes Ontario makes more, sometimes blah, 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 right? But What I want to give you is an example of one piece. One intellectual property is Paw Patrol. Let's talk about that. Two guys from Ontario sitting in a garage going, okay, let's create something here. You know, they got kids and, all right, what do you want to do? So they come up with all these crazy character dogs that talk and everything, called Paw Patrol, okay? And then guess what Paw Patrol made? Those two dudes, two guys that own that one property, $5.6 billion. Two guys, one piece. Made as much as the whole province that whole year on service production and domestic, okay? So, I mean, and now that's worth 14 point, last year in the thing it said 14 point something, but this year the 2.5, 14.4, it's sold to Nickelodeon. Now when I go to the toy store, there's a whole section. You can get your grandkids, sleep pajamas and backpacks and lunch buckets and, I mean, games, you name it. There's a whole section of Paw Patrol. That's a multi-billion-dollar property, one piece. And they kept the wealth there until they sold it to Nickelodeon. So that, I mean, that's developing original content, getting behind your story creators, okay? And why can't we do that here? We've got to own our stuff, we've got to produce it here, and then with our brilliant oil people who could transfer over and legals and everything else, we can distribute it. They already export here. We know that. We have the skill set here to build a lucrative multi-billion-dollar industry, you know? And I'm not being naive by this. I'm really being genuine when I'm saying this. And then when we build this machine, it gets a reputation just like New Mexico has because of the Nickelodeon. I mean, not Nickelodeon, Netflix, pardon me. Blah, blah, blah. So, Netflix built a studio in Albuquerque. There's a lot of content being created, right? But we can build that machine where, Sterling has a film, Chucky has a film, Zon has a film. And they come here and they can funnel it here because Canada is it's a smart place for producers to shoot because you get that tax rebate and there's, it's a one-time, it's not like the unions in LA. Screen Actors Guild, I still get checks. I get a stack of checks that big from Screen Actors Guild stuff that I did 30 years ago. Walker, Texas Rangers still sells. I don't get it. But, I mean, really, it's in West Wing. They still send you checks a million years later. You don't have to do that in Canada. You pay an actor once and you're gone. Should I say it? So in LA, there used to be this joke, well, I'm just going to become a porn producer. Porn producers just have to pay one fee. It's like shooting in Canada. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. But that's what they used to say. It's like you produce in Northridge, the Mecca, and when you produce there, you pay your cast and crew one time, and you get 100% of the profit. Well, you can do that when you shoot in Canada, right? You can split with your investors, you can split with your producers, but you're not writing checks for 30 years on the same piece of property to every actor on the set, Not yet, anyway. The union's, very small yet. So the spaghetti westerns, I already talked about that. Power of media, when you get involved in the power of media, which we have to as Indigenous people, you can't really control the narrative unless you're the one funding it, okay? I'm gonna skip some of this. I wanna get down to, oops, did I screw it up? So, Reservation Dogs, it's our victory, and I just want that to be your last image that you see, because Sterling said they let me do it all. We want to create an industry where we're respecting story content creators. Like even when I talked to Shelley at Telefilm the other day, I love her to death, and I love that there's a potential $500,000 I could possibly get for my feature film. Okay, I'm not dogging anything. It's just like they get what 361 million, and 4 million goes into the Indigenous envelope. And that 4 million has to go through every, development, talent to watch, top-offs, markets, film festivals, and then maybe 2 million goes to filmmakers. Because I wanted to talk to her and say, Shelley, what's wrong with me? I keep sending these proposals, which the proposals for any government funding is insane, right? And when you keep sending it, and then you got to wait 2 months to get your letter of rejection, and then you got to wait 4 more months to reapply again. Like, it's crazy making, and it's so disheartening. And you want to quit. It's like, I can't figure it out. I love this script. It's a great script. Or what about this comedy? And the last one that I got rejected for was Bear Grease for $35,000. That much money. And they rejected Bear Grease, which I sent evidence that this has been touring for 3 years. And you know what happened when I called and said, can I have a Zoom meeting with you? And I was talking to Jeff, and he said, you know, Adriana and I were looking at each other, and we laughed, and we said, oh my God, this is cultural appropriation, only backwards. And I was so caught up on that I was shocked, I was hurt. There again, it's that kick in the head again. Our Indigenous liaison is saying Bear Grease is cultural appropriation? I'm never going to get anything done. We will never get anything done if that's the attitude. So I mentioned that to Shelley, and she goes, what? What are you talking? Are you serious? I saw Bear Grease twice. It's anything but that. So please send it back in. Send it back in. You only got 3 days for all that, but send it in. So I said, let's get off the phone. I don't want to talk about everything. I sent it in, and we're still waiting for our yes or no. And then we talked about Salesman of the Year. It's like, you know, the waiting game, it's insane. We don't know what's happening. My son was lucky enough to, you know, what is it, like 8 different funding agencies, right? Indigenous Screen Office, Edmonton Industry Screen Office, the Alberta Film Commission, Telefilm, Crave, Bell Media. I mean, the funding structure for a $2.1 million movie, it's a lot of work. Like, it's a lot. I think they weed out filmmakers just based on that. Like, who can handle that? You know, that's a whole different mindset to go into that, to just be able to create content. So if I can appeal to you all after you've heard that, I'm sure you all agree. We need to create a film fund here in Alberta that Indigenous people operate, and then we can get everybody in the province working. And it's not a handout. We're not saying we want the matching dollars so that, you know, it's not that. For the Robins of the world, it's not a handout, okay? What I'm saying is we can do a 50-50 profit share. Share in the success with us. 50-50. It's not about the money. It's about creating, you know, a film mecca, a hub that so when my kids are making film, they don't have to do, you know, what we're doing now, because it's insane. It's crazy. It's, you know, erroneous. So I'm going to leave you with that. And let's celebrate the fact that Sterling is now making Lowdown. It's a non-Indigenous, the first time in history. Holy, Sterling. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy I got to see this in my lifetime, that you got to step outside the box, and you just get to, they're letting you do it all. I mean, you know, we aspire to be accomplished like you. So hi to everybody. I appreciate you. Hi. Yeah. Let me get this one.
We do have time for a Q&A, so I first wanted to just acknowledge the fact that your intergenerational filmmaking approach is something that I admire, and actually my kids are part of my practice as well, and have been on screen from, well, I was pregnant with one and the other one with 2 in diapers, which doesn't like the story. But, you know, growing up to where one's turning 21 in December and the other one just turned 19. And so we did a retrospective of my work to see them right from there till now. You know, it feels like that part, that mothering role that you played in your journey, you know, I can relate in my area. So I just wanted to acknowledge that role of your matriarch and how you also encouraged your family to come along. And I believe the conversation we're having is to encourage that next generation. So it was a little easier for my generation. You know, I hope my kids also have those advantages if they choose to follow in film.
Right.
But before we move to questions, I just wanted to share that as well, because I think that's really key to how we center our Indigenous worldview and our practices.
Right.
Is we're thinking of our community and our family in those layers. So just want to thank you for that and your work.
Thank you. You know, Malia, my granddaughter, and my grandson have already, Kisak has 2 credits. Malia has 2 credits. So my little babies, so we had to have 3 generations in there now. If you see Cody's daughter in Hey Victor, that's his bio daughter, his real daughter. So we've got these up and comings, and we got to create way more content for them to keep playing around, right?
Awesome. If anyone from the audience does have anything to share, it could be a question, could be a thought, gratitude. Allie Taylor, our program manager, and one who really helped me coordinate this event tonight. Big thank you for that. We'll come around, so feel free to put your hand up. Or if we have any questions on the chat, Jess Brenders can also indicate as well. Otherwise, we can keep talking for the next 10 minutes, but we really, yes, someone put their hand up.
Thank you for your presentation. That was very insightful. I haven't seen a lot of that stuff because I find it's a little bit too American. So that's why I don't watch it.
Too American.
Yeah, but my question about the content that we need to create going forward is, where's it going to come from? Because I've been questioning about intellectual property that is unprotected at the moment is all in the archives of First Nations. Mm-hmm. And when people like Hollywood come harvesting archives, they effectively steal it. You said that. How do we protect
Stories.
it?
Yeah, well, so that's a whole different conversation and a different presentation. But yeah, what I'm talking about is new properties that we're coming up with in our minds. I'm not talking about, the Geronimos and Tecumsehs. That's a whole different craft. And that's a budget that we can't garner yet as Indigenous people. There's no way, if I wanted to make a period piece, that I could do it at the quality I want. Dreamkeeper, $40 million, I can't pull that. Nobody can pull the kind of, the quality. Horses, period piece stuff, that's really expensive. I'm talking right now, contemporary, one of the biggest, Matthew told me this, he said, one of the biggest IPs that we have in Vancouver it's called Love It or Lose It. It's an unscripted, low-budget thing that's just it's now syndicated in 1 million different places. It's making a fortune. And it's just a low budget, somebody had an idea. Unscripted stuff is very, I don't want to say cheap, it's inexpensive comparatively, right? So I'm talking about developing content. Like my son, Cody, he'll just be sitting there at dinner and he'll we should, and he'll come up with it whoa. It's this thing, it's a flowing garden that he has. And a lot of storytellers are like that. It's nonstop, you can't stop it, even if you wanted to. So I'm talking about all those stories, contemporary stories. Yeah. The period pieces, that's a whole different, the intellectual property and all that.
Yeah, I've made one feature film, so I've definitely been through that cycle with telefilm before. It was called The Land of Rock and Gold. And just the time it took when you said that, it was many years. In fact, my last documentary, Our Maternal Home, was 10 years in the making. So the time invested to develop. But the fact when you said we only get one check is so true, because I get a lot of family who message and are like, hey, Janine, can I borrow $3,000? I know it's not much. What?
They think
the perception is that we're getting those royalty checks you're talking about, which we don't, because, I entrusted a distributor, they make that money. So, I think the learning in terms of where that is I often feel like when we were put the permit system and we weren't allowed to thrive historically, now that we can, we have to now take that onus and learn what that can be, because a lot of the family that it's they're scared of success, which that fear of success, my mom said I even went through. But I feel like collectively, we need that energy you were talking about when you got out of school and there was no fear.
Yeah.
That's the drive I hope for.
Right.
I'm going to keep scanning if there's any question. Oh,
I have a question.
okay, we got 2, so we'll...
You said that you couldn't do your dream role. It was not achievable anymore. What is that role?
Well, for me, a role One of my favorite roles that I ever did in theater was Joan of Arc, A Lie of the Mind Sam Shepard wrote. Like, that was a great role. Or even the Shakespeare Joan of Arc. I mean, what I'm talking about is a role where I get to really put all of my skill set into it. A really complex, multi-dimensional role, The roles that I've played so far, like West Wing, people go, oh my God, you were in West Wing. That was my least satisfying thing in the whole planet. You stand there, Aaron Sorkin is the writer. Gary Farmer, I remember the day he said, can we change it from we will be sovereign to we'll still be sovereign? Because we're sovereign, according to whatever. But, and they had to have a whole meeting and everything. They had to bring Aaron in to approve that one word. It's like, wow. So when you get there, you got to think, it was called Indians in the Lobby, okay? The Butterball Hotline, because it was Turkey Day. Turkey Day in LA, we get to audition twice a year, okay, as Indigenous people, Indians or whatever. Just before Turkey Day, I've been a guest star on, they always write Indians in for a day on different shows. And then in summer, just before summer, that's when the leathers and feathers stuff. And there's no Indigenous roles either, There's a couple actors that always, like Tantu will get the role. Because everybody's stereotypical, right? Oh, let's get Irene or let's get Tantu. Those roles are filled. But I'm talking about that meaty role where you get to go in. And, Ron Scott, he called me up. This is when I was in LA. I didn't know what Blackstone was. A lot of that content doesn't reach over. He said, I got this thing, Blackstone. I want you to play Tracy Bull. I call her Trainwreck Tracy. That was the funnest role I ever played because he let me improvise, get in there and instead of just standing in the kitchen, run out and chase the cops and that's what you would do if your kid was being taken. And he let me I got to have so much fun on that. And people, and I was nominated for a Canadian Screen Award, whatever. But yeah, so a role that I can really sink my teeth in, that allows me to really make a contribution as an actress, And so my daughter, the role she had in Trickster, that's a great role. Look at that, multidimensional, where you have to dig into psychology and really figure out a really incredible backstory for a human being that evolved. I didn't. I don't have those experiences, but I can definitely do substitution, I'm a trained actor. I want to use all that. I haven't been able to yet, but, other than Ron's thing. Ron, if you, yeah, I loved Trainwreck Tracy. She was fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Jolene? Hi, my name is Jolene. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm wondering, so as somebody who is part of the support teams, I work in costumes in film and theater and whatnot. Is there a network that you would recommend, or is there even a network out there to connect with other Indigenous filmmakers to kind of, just to make that connection and stuff? A lot of times, I go to a set and we're doing a show and there's very, very little. In fact, in the IATSE 212 caucus, I think there's 5 of us,
Mm-hmm.
out of 100 and whatever, right? So yeah, I was just wondering if you recommend, if there's a network out there that,
I don't
to
know
get
of one in
touch.
Alberta. We're new back in Canada, but I don't know of one in Alberta. We were developing. Was it before COVID, Dorian? Was it before COVID? That expo that we did. So at the Edmonton exhibition or Klondike Days, or where they have the big fair, they have an Indigenous hall. And they asked me, do you want to set up something here in this Indigenous hall? And I didn't, I don't go to Klondike Days. I don't whatever. It's okay, sure, why not? Let's have a movie booth. Because we're here and we want to, I already started this idea before COVID hit, right? So, but then COVID hit, killed it, and then I was dealing with some health stuff. But at the time, I went to Edmonton Industry Screen Office. And I said, hey, so I want to build this database. And I got full support. They helped me with these, what do you call those stands? Step and repeats, all that kind of stuff, right? I got great support. So there's support there. It's just the traffic in that thing. Like, I didn't know that there was only going to, there was hardly any people in there. And it was a really cool lounge. We set up with the couches, cinema, come on in. And anyone was allowed to, if you want to be involved in the industry, we're going to build a database, whatever it was. And I think I got 5 names. And I was there 10 days. It's such a, wow. So that was but we tried, and these guys supported me. So there's potential that we just got to figure out how to get people, one time, just for the hell of it, I said, who wants to get involved in the industry? Because I heard somebody that said, in Calgary, we couldn't find anybody. It's everybody's always saying, how can I get in? So I just put it out, and oh my God, it went ding, 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 ding. So people want to, we just have to now, how do we train them, right? And I had a meeting at IATSE, and I said, look, there's a reason why there's no Indigenous keys, right? So let's fix that. How could we fix that? Well, we could do A, B, C. And said, well, everybody complains about it, but nobody has solutions. But it's just so when we do develop something, Emery Burning Grass, okay? Comedy. When we shoot that, let's hire the keys, and I want the best of the best. I don't care, I want the best. And then get those keys to intern 2 Indigenous people, right? In LA, we have 13 unions. Okay, everyone has their own union. So 13 unions, you have to make an agreement. You only have to make an agreement with one. It's IATSE, and they handle everybody. It's so easy. You just go, and they're so cool there. They said, yeah, sure, we would support that. We would even put some money into it. So the organizations, the unions are open to it. It's just we have to do the work. Yeah.
I also think from that perspective too, trying to be hired as a trainee on a show, there's kind of this stigma of they don't want productions to take advantage of that role. But we need to advocate that if we're going to have a trainee position, that we're supporting some an Indigenous artist or something to come and shadow and stuff, and that should be written in the contract, that
absolutely
that trainee is there to do the job, because it is hard. In Alberta, we don't have a place right now that you can learn, right? And a lot of times it is learning on the job, being thrown into the deep end, and here you go look after that person and make sure they're warm or whatever, right? So anyway,
absolutely, I agree with you. It is very cliquey. I walked onto a set 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, in Calgary, and people that I worked with on Dreamkeeper came up. Oh my God! And I, not to be rude, but I'm the outsider coming in, so I couldn't memorize 300 people, but I was the only Indian on there, so they remembered me. I'm like, wow, what did you do? I'm sorry, because I feel like such a jerk. I can't remember everybody's names and the same wardrobe. Oh, I worked with you on Dream. Wow. Oh my God, it blows my mind that these same people are working together, and that's wonderful. It's just to open the door. That's what a lot of people say is I couldn't get in. So that's what we, our stuff's going to be non-union, right? We're gonna get really incredible keys, and we're gonna intern, and we'll just keep cultivating and growing the industry that way. And what we did in the U.S. was every time we went into production, when we'd hire crew, I would get the nations to fund the intern. So it's it's not even going to cost you a dime. We will give you extra hands, and we'll pay for it. It's not even going to cost you anything. So that's how we offset it all the time. So that's why we have to raise a fund. We can come up with creative ways where they're excited to have us participate, because it lowers their cost, right? Yeah.
Also, I always like to say, because I'm a producer too, a lot of the budget goes to businesses, caterers, hotels. The business is more than just the film. It actually does influence the economy, because we need to put them in a place to sleep, to eat, feed them on set, locations. So, I always think there's the economy, but it's serving a bigger purpose, which sometimes I think people get lost because they think it's a niche group just wanting to sit around and make movies, but we're actually part of a larger ecosystem and
It's
can benefit.
huge.
So,
Oh my God, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to build a business, we can give you probably a list that big. Just own porta potties and trailers. Like, seriously. Seriously. But nice ones. Like, we don't, not the ones at the powwow. I'm talking about nice ones, right? And you know what? Those trailers that Crystal was in, and I hope nobody's watching. Don't take offense to this, but I'm just being honest. Those were old trailers. I went, wow, look at how ruckety these old trailers are. And they're making Matthew told me. He goes, you know what? The ones that are making a fortune in film in this place are the service industry people. The ones who own the equipment and the grip trucks and all that stuff. And there's so much stuff that you need to make a film, right?
awesome.
Did you have a question, Luke?
Yeah, we'll take one more. We're getting
Luke,
close,
right up
but we'll close it with conversation. Oh, all good.
So Luke is the head cheese over here from the Edmonton Industry Screen Office, okay? Executive Director.
Yeah, let's call it that. So there's a couple things. To your point, Alberta's unique because we have what's called an all spend as our incentive. So it does attract work from a variety of different areas. So the hotels, the car rentals, all of those pieces, the restaurants, all of the things that we inhabit. One of the things that we're trying to do in Edmonton, and we've had this conversation, Georgina, is that as we invest in some of the projects that are coming through, and we don't have millions, but we've got some pretty decent amount of money that we put into these shows. Mm-hmm. Part of what we're trying to do now is to ensure that there's a training component that happens alongside it, and then moving those trainees onto those sets so that they actually get experience. So it's more than just being trained. The service production industry is not looking for trained individuals. They're looking for experienced individuals. And it's incumbent on us as a province to ensure that we're giving those opportunities to not just the young folks that are going through school, but also those that want to be part of the industry. Mm-hmm. So your conversation around, and your comments around creating a fund that then can draw in a lot more of those trainees can actually grow the sector across the province and ensuring that we're paying attention to the Indigenous communities and the Indigenous creators, because in the majority of the creators in this province don't have a business affairs office. So they spend more than half their time trying to attract money and to attract the components that are necessary to make the show rather than creating. So we have to find a way that allows us to do the content creation with those that are creating the content and having the access for the rest of it that becomes part and parcel with what you're doing. So that's some of the things that we're trying to do in Edmonton, and I know across the province. So I think it's important for us to understand government invests, the community invests, and then industry's got to invest. It's got to be a partnership through all of us to be able to make this work and to get to the point of the numbers that you were seeing up on the screen.
Right. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well,
I
want to
education.
thank everyone for their time to sit and begin this conversation, because really, she did tell me this could have been 5 hours long and made that point twice. I heard it here today too as well. So we know this is just the beginning of the conversation. And I think, reciprocity in mind, I think what you're saying is in that way we do need each other in some way to work together, and that's the kind of bigger TRC call to action that we still can live into.
Yeah.
So, I really appreciate that conversation, but looking ahead too, because, there's a lot of creative producers who come to Banff Centre, they bring their stories, they got different roles. One thing I do love about my background in film is I've worked with musicians, editors, costume designers, storytellers. Mm-hmm. I was even my own craft services when I was a producer, because you got to do it all. But what I learned is the more you collaborate, the more you learn, the better quality your films can be and the larger reach, and the more people are excited with you when these films come out. Because I'd rather be excited with 100 people who supported me than by myself screaming. Yeah. So just some things to think about. But with that, I want to take time to just honor you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and reminding us that even if we kick or get kicked in the head, I feel like I kick myself in the head though. but that there is that purpose that gets us excited to keep the work going. So big thank you to our matriarch, to our team here today, and for everyone online as well. Tinigi Magwitch.
Thank you.